Hey everybody, Rock DIY here. Today I'm on to a new project. I'm going to, I guess, help myself in the long run by replacing all of the deck boards across this front porch. It is 16 feet by 6 feet, 16 feet long by 6 feet wide. I've had to replace different boards at different times depending on how eroded they became. And then on top of that, in 4 years I've already had to paint this twice, so it's pretty high maintenance. What I'm going to do is replace all these deck boards and replace all of these steps with some Trex composite deck boards. So I got all these here. I think it's actually a total of 40, I think it's 46 6-foot boards that make up this deck. So that's what I've got here. I bought 24 12-foot by 5.5 inch Trex composite deck boards. And to make a long story short on this, I called in advance, asked them if they did cut the Trex composite deck boards, and the store said yes. So I drove there only to find out that one of the ladies at the help desk said that they cannot use their saw to cut Trex or composite deck boards, even though I called and asked if they did. So obviously there's a disconnect there. But then before that, I was told to go wait over by the saw and somebody would come see me to discuss it. And when I got over to the saw, I discovered that the saw was out of order. So either way, I wasn't getting any of the Trex boards cut. And unfortunately, because I was told that they would cut it initially, I didn't bring anything with me. So I had to drive all the way back home, get some power tools and bring them back with me, and then cut them in the parking lot with my son. That is where I'm at. Got a bunch of 6-foot boards here that I am going to put on the deck. And as far as this deck goes, from what I've seen already, there are square head screws, there are cross tip screws, and there are Torx screws. And because paint is thick on them, you can't really tell what they are until you work the screw head a little bit, and then you discover what it is. So I got to have all 3 of those on hand ready to use. One of the other things that I didn't mention as far as having to continuously paint these, because I think typically if you're using the right type of stain or paint on your deck, as far as the elements go, you should be able to get away with having to paint every 4 or 5 years. And I've only been in this house for 4 years, and I've had to paint everything twice, and you can see what's going on. I've got a lot of flitting going on. I've also got some black mold that's getting into, well, developing where the cracks are in the deck boards. So I've got mold all over in here, and then there is mold over here. And that's another unfortunate part of when these deck boards were put down. I mean, it was a good idea to texture the paint for grip. I think they put sand in the paint to give it a good grip, and it does have a good grip, but that also didn't help with the screw heads, because in some cases you can't even see the screw heads. So it's going to be fun getting them all out. I got these Trex composite deck boards because they really don't require any maintenance. There's no painting, there's no staining. You can clean them, but you don't have to do the typical things that you would have to do if you had a wood deck. And as far as installing these, I don't have to put screws directly through. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. And I didn't buy the type that you would typically put through the top of the boards. I actually bought these universal fasteners, and they basically just go between the boards, and then the screw in the center tightens both boards down, and it actually puts the necessary gap between the boards as well. So that's a good thing. I believe these deck boards are like the low end of the Trex composite deck boards. But what I was trying to do when I was looking for them is try to get the color that matches what we already have. And these were the only ones that the color was close enough to, because I'm only replacing the deck boards right now. I'm not replacing anything else. And then what you'll find, I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 different tiers of Trex composite deck boards. And like I said, this is the base, and then you have others that are better than these. And I think it's really to do with the material used, in as far as scrapes and scratches on the surface of the material. The higher you go up, the harder it is to actually scratch or mar the surface of the boards. The other thing is the way the colors come is in each tier there's only certain colors. So if I wanted to buy a better composite deck board, they wouldn't even have the color that I want. So I ended up going with these. These were $24 each, and this is 5.5 inch by 12 foot, cut down to 6 foot long boards. But I did get $9 off each board, and I got the $9 off each board because of the inconvenience of being told that they did cut them. I had to drive about 30 miles each way, so I drove about 120 miles, and as everybody knows, gas is not cheap. And then I mean, it was a total inconvenience to be told that they did cut them, so I had to come all the way back home, get tools, and go back to cut them myself and then bring them home. Or I could have paid to have them ship them to my house, but that would have been somewhere between $80 and $120 to ship them to my house. And I'd much rather not paying for shipping if I don't necessarily need to, and in this case, I didn't want to. This is where I'm at. I've got the composite deck boards ready to go down. I just got to get everything removed from the deck and go on from there. I could just rip these screws right out of the wood, but I would like to preserve the wood underneath the deck boards. So in this case, the head is stripped out, but a good technique for removing them. Basically just screw it down, lock it down on the screw head, and then tighten it up, and it comes out. About halfway finished, and you can see the rot. It looks like it's only in these 2 areas, which happens to be directly in line with the center of the front door. And I think what's happening is the boards weren't gapped properly in the first place to allow for expansion and contraction. But the seams between the boards pretty much got clogged up with stuff like dog hair and pine needles and everything else. And I think from it just sitting in there wet all the time, it started rotting the structure underneath the deck boards. So I'm going to have to fix this. One other thing that was noticed, and I'll check it again, but there is a dip that goes like this right in the center area here. So we might need to dig a hole, add a post underneath, pour some concrete in it to help support the middle of the deck, because it is 16 feet across, 6 feet wide, and this is probably the weakest point of the whole structure. Although it is bolted into the house, there's 4 bolts going across holding it onto the house. These aren't full length posts, the ones next to the house. These 2 and these 2 are full length posts, and those are 6x6s. Yeah, this rot goes pretty deep. Yeah, that's rotted about 1.5 inches down, if not. I'm not sure if I can scab these or if I have to add full length 16-foot boards. Alright, so here's where I'm at. Got all of the deck boards off. These deck boards are just sitting here as planks to get in and out of the front door of the house. Quite a bit of surprises doing this. There's some rot there as well. I'm not sure if I can scab these by placing some boards on the outside and then the inside on both of them. Of course, I'd have to remove these in order to scab them with a lengthy enough board. Not sure if I can do that or if I'm going to have to replace them. If I have to replace them, then I need to replace that one, and then I would probably replace this one too, just because I don't want it to be something I have to revisit, especially after going through the trouble of removing it all and putting Trex on here and then having the wood underneath rot. On another note, I'm not a deck building expert. I'm not sure that this is built to code or safety standards. There are 4 lag bolts going into the logs on the house supporting that side. That post is not a full length post. That post over there is not a full length post. That one, that one, that one, and that one are all full length posts. I can see where it's supported over here and it's supported along here, but because it's 16 feet across, I'm not so sure that this middle section, which obviously is a very high traffic area for going in and out of the house, and I believe that the traffic going in and out of the house is what caused some of these issues. And if you actually stand inside the structure of the deck and look down this way, you can actually see where it kind of dips in the center. And I think that's because this is such a huge span of wood, 16-foot long boards with nothing really supporting them other than that end and that end. These boards right here serve no purpose other than to keep the spacing correct here as it would be down there. But I measured these, and whoever built this did a pretty poor job because all the boards are different lengths, and what is the length here is not the length down there. So obviously it's not correct and needs to be corrected. So if I do decide to replace these 16-foot boards, these will have to come out, and then the front where the steps are needs to be replaced as well. These steps here will be replaced. Those will be the last thing done. I do need to figure out a way to prevent this portion right here, because just like you see right here, when it rains, rain sits in there, dirt sits in there, and there's no escape for the water. So I may need to, the Trex composite wood that I put here, I may have to back it up some to allow the water to pass through. Otherwise I won't have issues with the Trex, but I'll have issues with the wood again. That's probably what contributed to that right there. So where I am right now, this removing all these deck boards did take a pretty long time. Good thing is I had 3 separate cordless drills, one with a T25 Torx bit on it, one with a Phillips, and one with a square top on it, or square bit, because there were 3 different types, and in a lot of cases it was really difficult to tell which type it was because of the amount of paint that was in the heads of all the screws. So even if you cleaned it out a little bit, you would think that it was a cross tip, only to find out that it was a T25 Torx bit. Something else I'm going to do while I've got this open is I need to fix the decline of the ground underneath so that it's higher up towards the house and then declines down so that water will pass and go that way versus just sitting down here, because whenever it rains, a lot of water just sits right here in pools. So I need to basically build a trench along here that allows the water to go down and out that way, because that's where the majority of the rain in the front of the house goes out anyway, goes out that way. So that'll be fixed. I did use a pressure washer to clean all this, and the other thing I may do once it dries, if it dries, because unfortunately it rains so much, and even if I cover this, it's not going to help because of the humidity. I was thinking about putting some Thompson's water seal, even though it's pressure treated wood, just since I'm going through the trouble or going through the effort of putting this Trex composite deck wood on, I want to make sure I don't do something and then have to do more work later because I didn't do it in the first place. So I may do the sealant as well. Here's what I got right now. That board right there that goes out and away from the house on that end, I'm pretty sure is probably where it's been since this has been built. And when I measured the angle on it, it was declined away out and away from the house about a 1/4 inch. So there's a 1/4 inch difference from this end to that end. And then I also came down on this end and measured it as well, and it was about a 1/4 inch. But now if you look at this 6 foot level right here, you can see that from the house right here to where the steps are over here, you can see the gap underneath each one of these boards. And if I were to level that level right there completely, I would have to raise the outside end about 1.5 inches to make it level with the board over here. I don't want to make it level. I do want the decline, but the decline needs to be the same as what is out there and over on this side where I'm at. So I will have to do something to fix what is essentially a huge amount of sag in the center of the deck. May have to take a similar piece of wood, run it across underneath these 3 boards here, stand it up on its side and run it across underneath these, and then have another put a post, and then I'll dig a hole, put some concrete in it, put the post in it, and then put the board in to help basically push this up, because right now it's too much. And I don't know that you can tell on camera, but standing where I'm standing right now, you can see it's almost like a bowl. Just doesn't look right, and it shouldn't be that way. Here is where I'm at on day 2 of this decking project. So quite a few things here. So I do have to fix the board, the 16-footer boards that go across. I'm going to sister some boards or scab some boards to fix 2 of the boards, the 16-footers. I'm going to fix those, and then there's some other rot that needs to be treated, and I bought some wood hardener that I'll put in some spots, but not in the bigger spots. And in fact, where the erosion or wood rot is, I'm probably going to cut that out and then place another piece of wood inside of it, and then put the scab wood in. And then I wasn't going to do the steps until I was done with the deck boards on the actual deck. But what I did is I removed these face pieces on the steps, and now I know why the steps were really bouncy, because there's a lot of space between the risers. And then also, based on everything I read, 3 risers would be good on a 36-inch wide set of steps, but these steps are 6 foot, so they should at a minimum have 4 risers. So I'm going to have to fix that, and I may need to add 2 more in there to get rid of the bounce in the steps, because I've always noticed, especially after it rains, the steps are really bouncing, and that's because there's no risers in here, in these areas right here. And then I also discovered, and did not know until today, that there's actually an additional set of steps right down here that was buried underneath the gravel, and it's all rotted, as you can see right there. It's all rotted, so I'm gonna pull all that out. I don't know that it actually needs to be there, but I may just put some boards back on there. But I need to find out whether the risers at the bottom are rotted out or not before I actually go and purchase additional risers, because I may need to replace 1, 2, or all 3 of these sets of risers. I've got a lot of work to do before I can even get to putting deck boards down. I'm also going to fix the gravel underneath the deck, and then I'm also going to put some sealant on the house where the chinking is underneath the deck to seal it off from the critters. So as I've said already, this is the house that has the gift of giving, because with this deck there is nothing consistent whatsoever on it. And you can see here, it might be difficult for you to see, but these are basically all the 16 footers going across. I measured this far end, the space between the boards, and then this far end, and then also measured down the center. So I got 15.5 over here, 15.25 over here, 16.125, 16.25, 15 3/8, 15.5, 16.125, and then 5 7/8. And then down the center, 15, 15.5, 15.125, and these are just measuring, doing an inside measurement. This wasn't on center. So based on the numbers, it looks like they were trying to do around 16. Didn't quite make it to 16. Definitely wasn't 16 on center at all with any of these measurements. And then I took out 2 of these spacer boards. This one's 15.125, which was in between here, and then this piece over here is 16.5, and it went right there. I took that out so I can get to this damage, and I'm going to take this one out to get to this damage. And what I'm going to do is just cut it out and then put a filler piece in there, put a bunch of screws in it, and then put some scabs on it to hold it up. I'm not sure what they were going for as far as whether they wanted the deck to be level all the way across, or if they wanted it to have a decline going out and away from the house. I'm guessing they wanted a decline. So on this far end, it's close. There's probably like less than a quarter, and then an 1/8. But if I wanted it to be, level all the way across, it would need to be up a 1/2 inch on the far outside edge. So that's this end. And then when I put it down here, can tell that, well, let me put it in a spot where the rot isn't, and you can see that the center of the deck was taking on quite a bit of load over time. I don't know how old this deck is, but there's about 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1/2 inch there. There's just nothing supporting the middle of the deck. And let's go to the other end. Let's see what we got. So this end is pretty much the same as the other end. Pretty much 1/4 inch or less than a 1/4 inch gap on the right hand side and on the left hand side, and then I think it was a 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1/2 inch in the center. So what I was thinking about doing was digging a hole, putting a post in, putting some concrete in, but instead of doing that, I'm just gonna, there's already aggregate down here, but I'll add some additional aggregate. But what I'll do is use my tamper right here and tamp this down pretty good, put some more aggregate, tamp it down some more, and then I'll take those concrete blocks right there, put them underneath, and then I'll put a post coming up, and then I'll screw these spanners or these joists to hold the center of the deck up so that it doesn't sag anymore. But I'm probably going to need something that goes from over here over to here that holds all three of them. Not 100% sure how I'm going to do that, because I don't know that just putting a post on this one is going to support the rest of it, but maybe the deck boards being on it will wrap it all up and make it work. But I'm not thinking it will, because I do need to bring this board up, and that board up. So I may need to do 3 separate ones just to keep the center nice and straight or level with the rest of the deck. We will see. This is something you gotta love. Actually, I kind of hit it a little bit and straightened it out, but it was at an angle, it was crooked. But you can see they put 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there's a 5th nail in there on this side, and they're not even in all the way. And then they put none on this side, and then there are 3 nails at the very top of this one and none below. And this is what I have to deal with trying to fix this deck.